Thank you very much. My fellow Americans, as President of the United States, my highest obligation is to ensure the safety and security of the American people. History has shown that the longer we ignore a threat, the more dangerous that threat becomes. For this reason, upon taking office, I've ordered a complete strategic review of our policy toward the rogue regime in Iran. That review is now complete. Today, I am announcing our strategy, along with several major steps we are taking to confront the Iranian regime's hostile actions and to ensure that Iran never, and I mean never, acquires a nuclear weapon. Our policy is based on a clear-eyed assessment of the Iranian dictatorship, its sponsorship of terrorism, and its continuing aggression in the Middle East and all around the world. Iran is under the control of a fanatical regime that seized power in 1979 and forced a proud people to submit to its extremist rule. This radical regime has raided the wealth of one of the world's oldest and most vibrant nations and spread death, destruction, and chaos all around the globe. Beginning in 1979, agents of the Iranian regime illegally seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held more than 60 Americans hostage during the 444 days of the crisis. The Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah twice bombed our embassy in Lebanon, once in 1983 and again in 1984. Another Iranian-supported bombing killed 241 Americans, service members they were, in their barracks in Beirut in 1983. In 1996, the regime directed another bombing of American military housing in Saudi Arabia, murdering 19 Americans in cold blood. Iranian proxies provided training to operatives who were later involved in al-Qaeda's bombing of the American embassies in Kenya, Tanzania, and 2 years later killing 224 people and wounding more than 4,000 others. The regime harbored high-level terrorists in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, including Osama bin Laden's son. In Iraq and Afghanistan, groups supported by Iran have killed hundreds of American military personnel. The Iranian dictatorship's aggression continues to this day. The regime remains the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and provides assistance to al-Qaeda, the Taliban, Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist networks. It develops, deploys, and proliferates missiles that threaten American troops and our allies. It harasses American ships and threatens freedom of navigation in the Arabian Gulf and in the Red Sea. It imprisons Americans on false charges, and it launches cyber attacks against our critical infrastructure, financial system, and military. The United States is far from the only target of the Iranian dictatorship's long campaign of bloodshed. The regime violently suppresses its own citizens. It shot unarmed student protesters in the street during the Green Revolution. This regime has fueled sectarian violence in Iraq and vicious civil wars in Yemen and Syria. In Syria, the Iranian regime has supported the atrocities of Bashar al-Assad's regime and condoned Assad's use of chemical weapons against helpless civilians, including many, many children. Given the regime's murderous past and present, we should not take lightly its sinister vision for the future. The regime's two favorite chants are death to America and death to Israel. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the United States and the United Nations Security Council sought over many years to stop Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons with a wide array of strong economic sanctions. But the previous administration lifted these sanctions just before what would have been the total collapse of the Iranian regime through the deeply controversial 2015 nuclear deal with Iran. This deal is known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. As I have said many times, the Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. The same mindset that produced this deal is responsible for years of terrible trade deals that have sacrificed so many millions of jobs in our country to the benefit of other countries. We need negotiators who will much more strongly represent America's interests. The nuclear deal threw Iran's dictatorship a political and economic lifeline, providing urgently needed relief from the intense domestic pressure the sanctions had created. It also gave the regime an immediate financial boost, and over $100 billion its government could use to fund terrorism. The regime also received a massive cash settlement of $1.7 billion from the United States, a large portion of which was physically loaded onto an airplane and flown into Iran. Just imagine the sight of those huge piles of money being hauled off by the Iranians waiting at the airport for the cash. I wonder where all that money went. Worst of all, the deal allows Iran to continue developing certain elements of its nuclear program, and importantly, in just a few years, as key restrictions disappear, Iran can sprint towards a rapid nuclear weapons breakout. In other words, we got weak inspections in exchange for no more than a purely short-term and temporary delay in Iran's path to nuclear weapons. What is the purpose of a deal that, at best, only delays Iran's nuclear capability for a short period of time? This, as President of the United States, is unacceptable. In other countries, they think in terms of 100-year intervals, not just a few years at a time. The saddest part of the deal for the United States is that all of the money was paid up front, which is unheard of, rather than at the end of the deal when they have shown they've played by the rules. But what's done is done, and that's why we are where we are. The Iranian regime has committed multiple violations of the agreement. For example, on 2 separate occasions, they have exceeded the limit of 130 metric tons of heavy water. Until recently, the Iranian regime has also failed to meet our expectations in its operation of advanced centrifuges. The Iranian regime has also intimidated international inspectors into not using the full inspection authorities that the agreement calls for. Iranian officials and military leaders have repeatedly claimed they will not allow inspectors onto military sites, even though the international community suspects some of those sites were part of Iran's clandestine nuclear weapons program. There are also many people who believe that Iran is dealing with North Korea. I am going to instruct our intelligence agencies to do a thorough analysis and report back their findings beyond what they have already reviewed. By its own terms, the Iran deal was supposed to contribute to regional and international peace and security. And yet, while the United States adheres to our commitment under the deal, the Iranian regime continues to fuel conflict, terror, and turmoil throughout the Middle East and beyond. Importantly, Iran is not living up to the spirit of the deal. So today, in recognition of the increasing menace posed by Iran, and after extensive consultations with our allies, I am announcing a new strategy to address the full range of Iran's destructive actions. First, we will work with our allies to counter the regime's destabilizing activity and support for terrorist proxies in the region. Second, we will place additional sanctions on the regime to block their financing of terror. Third, we will address the regime's proliferation of missiles and weapons that threaten its neighbors' global trade and freedom of navigation. And finally, we will deny the regime all paths to a nuclear weapon. Today, I'm also announcing several major steps my administration has taken in pursuit of this strategy. The execution of our strategy begins with the long overdue step of imposing tough sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The Revolutionary Guard is the Iranian Supreme Leader's corrupt personal terror force and militia. It has hijacked large portions of Iran's economy and seized massive religious endowments to fund war and terror abroad. This includes arming the Syrian dictator, supplying proxies and partners with missiles and weapons to attack civilians in the region, and even plotting to bomb a popular restaurant right here in Washington, D.C. I am authorizing the Treasury Department to further sanction the entire Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps for its support for terrorism and to apply sanctions to its officials, agents, and affiliates. I urge our allies to join us in taking strong actions to curb Iran's continued dangerous and destabilizing behavior, including thorough sanctions outside the Iran deal that target the regime's ballistic missile program in support for terrorism and all of its destructive activities, of which there are many. Finally, on the grave matter of Iran's nuclear program, since the signing of the nuclear agreement, the regime's dangerous aggression has only escalated. At the same time, it has received massive sanctions relief while continuing to develop its missiles program. Iran has also entered into lucrative business contracts with other parties to the agreement. When the agreement was finalized in 2015, Congress passed the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act to ensure that Congress's voice would be heard on the deal. Among other conditions, this law requires the president or his designee to certify that the suspension of sanctions under the deal is appropriate and proportionate to measure and other measures taken by Iran to terminate its illicit nuclear program. Based on the factual record I have put forward, I am announcing today that we cannot and will not make this certification. We will not continue down a path whose predictable conclusion is more violence, more terror, and the very real threat of Iran's nuclear breakout. That is why I am directing my administration to work closely with Congress and our allies to address the deal's many serious flaws so that the Iranian regime can never threaten the world with nuclear weapons. These include the deal's sunset clauses that in just a few years will eliminate key restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. The flaws in the deal also include insufficient enforcement and near total silence on Iran's missile programs. Congress has already begun the work to address these problems. Key House and Senate leaders are drafting legislation that would amend the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act to strengthen enforcement, prevent Iran from developing an internet, this is so totally important, an intercontinental ballistic missile, and make all restrictions on Iran's nuclear activity permanent under U.S. law. So important. I support these initiatives. However, in the event we are not able to reach a solution working with Congress and our allies, then the agreement will be terminated. It is under continuous review, and our participation can be canceled by me as president at any time. As we have seen in North Korea, the longer we ignore a threat, the worse that threat becomes. It is why we are determined that the world's leading sponsor of terrorism will never obtain nuclear weapons. In this effort, we stand in total solidarity with the Iranian regime's longest-suffering victims, its own people. The citizens of Iran have paid a heavy price for the violence and extremism of their leaders. The Iranian people long to, and they just are longing to reclaim their country's proud history, its culture, its civilization, its cooperation with its neighbors. We hope that these new measures directed at the Iranian dictatorship will compel the government to reevaluate its pursuit of terror at the expense of its people. We hope that our actions today will help bring about a future of peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East, a future where sovereign nations respect each other and their own citizens. We pray for a future where young children, American and Iranian, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, can grow up in a world free from violence, hatred, and terror. And until that blessed day comes, we will do what we must to keep America safe. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Thank you. Thank you.
Deal?
Thank you very much. Respect each other and their own.
That was President Trump's speech where he talked about the Iran deal and announced he will not certify the Iran deal. That means it goes to Congress, and President Trump has said he is advising Congress to make some changes in the Iran deal to make it stronger, to keep Iran from eventually developing a nuclear weapon and ICBMs. And President Trump said, if Congress and the allies don't make changes in the Iran deal that he is satisfied with, he will pull out of the Iran deal. So President Trump has put that on the table. We would love to get your thoughts on it. This is the post show right now, the post show for the President Trump Iran speech. This is Right Side Broadcasting. Let me know what you thought about the speech, and what do you think about President Trump decertifying the Iran deal and threatening to pull out if satisfactory changes are not made to the Iran deal. What do you think about that? Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, and I'll read your comment on the air. This is Right Side broadcasting. As usual today, we are bringing you President Trump's remarks in full. We've been doing that since the campaign, where we went to all of the rallies, and we were the only ones who were showing all of the full rallies. We didn't comment on them. We just let you see them, let you see the president's full speech, let you see all the speakers beforehand. We showed you the crowds, and we did that today. We let you see the whole speech, and we just want to hear what you think about it. So if you like our coverage of President Trump and breaking news in general, please donate, because we are viewer supported. We're a very small company, and we rely on your donations to stay on the air. So if you like our coverage, you can donate by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat, right next to the broadcast. At the bottom of the YouTube chat, there's a $ there. You can just click on that little $. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Thank you so much to the moderators in the chat rooms for moderating our chat today. And we want to talk about this speech. Again, President Trump said he is not satisfied with the Iran deal. He doesn't think Iran is living up to the spirit of the deal. He said he's not going to certify the deal. And what that means is that Congress now has 60 days to propose and pass any possible changes to the deal. And the president said if he doesn't get changes from Congress and the allies, because there are a number of allies who are in on this deal too. If he doesn't get changes from Congress and the allies on this deal that he's satisfied with, he says he will pull out of this deal. One of the big changes he wants is he wants the provisions of the deal to keep going for a longer amount of time. So he said he wanted all restrictions on Iran's nuclear activities to be permanent under the deal. Right now, after I think 10 years, the provisions of the deal, the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program start falling away, and eventually Iran can start producing more enriched uranium, and eventually by doing that, they could have a very short time to producing nuclear weapons once the deal is over. And so basically, a really important criticism some people have of this deal is some people say, you know what, fine, it works for 10, 15 years, but after that, Iran could start producing their nuclear material again, and they will have a very short time to develop a nuclear weapon if they so choose. President Trump doesn't like that, and he did say he wanted the restrictions on Iran's nuclear activities to be permanent under U.S. law. So we'll see what happens. Will Congress make changes in this deal? Will the president be satisfied with them? Even if they do make changes, will the allies allow for those changes? And if all of that doesn't happen, will President Trump pull out of the nuclear deal with Iran? We'll have to see what happens. Thank you, by the way, S-Blaster. S-Blaster gave a donation. We really appreciate that. And we also got a donation from Dustin Gold. Oh, Trump guy. Thank you, Dustin, so much for the donation. And Rhonda Keller made a donation too. Thank you, Rhonda. Again, we are viewer supported. So if you want to donate, you can go to the YouTube chat at the bottom of the chat room. You can click on the $ or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Your donations keep us on the air. All right, I'd love to hear from you. What did you think about President Trump's speech? What do you think about this Iran policy, about him not certifying the deal and saying we need changes or he's not going to stay in the deal? What do you think? So I'm going to check and see if anybody's written me yet. But write to me on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Daniel Valet writes in, this should help us strengthen our relationship with Israel. Thank you, President Trump. Cindy Lopez writes in, he is doing the right thing, but I doubt Congress will act. Obama did so much damage to our country, and Trump is trying to fix it. James Crow writes in, great speech by our president. If Congress can't get it done, who would really be shocked? We need to pull out of this deal. Jules Full-On Patriot writes, good, terminate it, pull out. Gary Crunk writes, President Trump is MAGA again. Iran deal was horrible, and he is making smart moves to eliminate the one-sided deal. Again, we're reading your comments about President Trump's speech and his proposal, his decertification of the Iran deal, and he has said he wants Congress to make changes to this deal to make it stronger, make it last longer, and if he's not satisfied, he's going to pull America out of the deal. And also the allies would have to agree to these changes too. So we will see what happens. But let me know if you have thoughts on this. Write to me at @Lookner on Twitter, at LOOKNER. By the way, if you want to know when we're coming on the air with breaking news videos, we do it all the time here at Right Side Broadcasting. Be sure, subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell. Also, you can follow us on Facebook at Right Side Broadcasting and on Twitter at @RSB Network. Gary Crunk says, Iran never stopped their nuclear program. Obama and his deal just funded their hidden nuke program. The deal benefited only Iran. Spooky pronoun in response to President Trump threatening to pull out of the nuclear deal. He says, he or she says, and how does that help with the goal of Iran not acquiring the nuclear weapons? So it sounds like spooky pronoun wants us to stay in the deal because he thinks or she thinks that will help from preventing Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Thank you, Ladybugs USA, for the donation. That's very kind of you. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So I want to just check my notes here real quick about some of the other things. One of the other important things President Trump said in his speech is that he has instructed the Treasury Department to put sanctions on the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is a branch of the Iranian military. And President Trump called it a corrupt terror force. And he said he is taking the long overdue step, he said, of imposing sanctions on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Just checking my other notes here. Also, another thing President Trump said is that he wants additional restrictions on Iran's missile programs. He said he does not want Iran to develop an ICBM. And those restrictions on the missile program are not part of the nuclear agreement. So it sounds like maybe President Trump wants Congress to make missile restrictions part of the Iran nuclear agreement. I'm not so sure Iran will go along with that. Remember, Iran has to go along with this too. If Congress proposes some changes to the Iran deal to make it stronger, and the other signatories to the Iran deal decide, other countries say, okay, we go along with that, Iran still has to agree with it. Iran could always pull out of the deal too. Now, that would mean that sanctions go back on them from the United States. But a lot has to happen for this deal to change. Congress has to approve something. The allies have to agree to it. President Trump has to agree to it, and Iran has to agree to it. We will see what happens. Michael Ivory says he should have pulled out today. This placates the globalists. Let me know what you thought about the speech and about President Trump's proposal about the Iran deal, saying he's decertifying it and he wants changes or he's going to pull out of it. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at LOOKNER. If you like breaking news, you can follow me on Twitter as well at Lookner. I post about breaking news all the time. Bob See Your Uncle writes in, pallets of money delivered to Tehran during Obama's administration and no one says a word on either side makes me sick to this day. I'm just peeking to see if there's any new news or updates on this. Now, I don't believe, while the president has said there's going to be sanctions on the Republican Guard, the Iranian Republican Guard, I don't know, I didn't hear him saying, I can't tell if he's designating them a terrorist organization or not. He didn't use those specific words, and I'm seeing some conflicting information online. So I'll have to check out about this. S Blaster gave a donation. Thank you, S Blaster. He said Steve once wrote a book with the word fart in the title. That is true. I'll have to do so. This is Ankit Panda says U.S. Treasury Department announces Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps specially designated nationals designations after Trump's Iran speech. But I need to do a little more reading on what exactly this means. That just came out. David Ops writes in, he just put the ball in Congress's court, and he also is supporting the Iranian people. Obama threw them under the bus. And one thing, as David says, one thing President Trump did say is he thinks that the big victims of the Iranian administration have been the Iranian people. He said that today. Light Switch, thank you for your donation. Really appreciate it. Light Switch made a donation and said hashtag MAGA. If you have other thoughts on this President Trump's announcement today, want to hear what you think about this, write to me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Patriot of Truth says, what was the deal with Iran? I don't know the story at all. Well, in sum, the basic idea was during the Obama administration, there was a deal made with Iran where we would ease sanctions on them and release a sizable amount of funds we had been holding that they said was theirs. So basically give them cash in exchange for agreeing to certain restrictions on their nuclear program, which lasted for 10 years or more, and then after that time, the restrictions would gradually fall away on their nuclear program. So that's the very rough summary of the deal. Some people really liked it because they said, look, at least for the next 10 years, 15 years or so, this will really slow their nuclear program. They had to give up, agree to inspections and give up nuclear material they'd already had and stuff like that. And some people said this will really slow their nuclear program. Other people said it's not enough. It's only a temporary slowing. We're giving them all this money, and yet in the long run they can still develop nuclear weapons. So a lot of differing views, strong differing views on this Iran nuclear deal. President Trump is not a supporter of it. Okay, all right, so I think we're going to spend just a couple more minutes here. If you have comments on President Trump's announcement that he's decertifying the nuclear deal, get them in soon. Write to me at Lookner on Twitter, at Lookner. This was who I was sent something by. Sam Miller sent me this. This is a tweet from Chad Pergram from Fox, and according to Chad Pergram from Fox, Paul Ryan said, I support Trump's decision to reevaluate this dangerous deal, and the HSC will work to counter Iran's range of destabilizing activities. The House, that is, will work to counter Iran's range of destabilizing activities. So that's a statement from Paul Ryan. Thank you, Carl Peterson, for the donation. Carl Peterson says, thank you, Lookner and RSB, and happy Friday. Thank you, Carl. Happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Daniel Valet says, will this trigger protests from Iranians here in the U.S.? I haven't heard of any protests. I mean, not to say there won't be, but I haven't heard of any big protests planned or anything like that. Maybe Iranian people in the U.S. are split. Maybe some Iranians do want to keep the deal. Maybe some Iranians think, well, we don't like the deal because it helps the regime. It helps Iran economically, which helps the regime, and they might want the regime to fail in Iran. So I can't speak for all Iranians in this country. Maybe there's different views out there. Born in the USA says, does the Iran deal cost us money now? Does it cost us money now? Well, we gave them back money we owed them, and we also lessened sanctions on them. But I don't think, unless I'm wrong, I think the big payment that we gave them was money that they said they were owed and we were holding. I don't believe we were just paying them money out of our pockets. So that's my understanding. I might be wrong about that. It's a good question, but that's what my understanding from my reading I did before on this. But that might be wrong. So that's something I got to look up after. Good question. Patriot of Truth says, Trump is not a supporter of it. I am not. Solomon's Temple says, missed the caller option on your show. It's something we have on our to-do list. It's a bit of a technical thing. It's not so easy to take calls, but it's something we are working on and we would like to eventually implement. So thank you for writing in. Okay, I think I've gotten to all your comments. So I think at this point we are going to wrap up the broadcast. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to the moderators in the chat room and the chat rooms for moderating the chats. I see JC and Real Frank and Barbara and Ron and who else? Maybe that's who's there right now. So, and any of the other moderators that were there, thank you. And also, thank you so much for your donations. We really appreciate it. Your donations are what allow us to be on the air, giving you agenda-free coverage of the news, where we don't just yell at you and tell you what to think, where we hear from you, and we let the president and other people just speak fully and just show you what's going on out there. So, and it's an alternative to the mainstream media. So if you like that kind of coverage, please consider making a donation. You can go to the YouTube chat room and click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. We even have a thing where if you make a monthly donation, you can get cool free right side stuff like this mug. And to hear about that, go to rsbn.tv/donate. All right, so we're going to wrap this up now. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As I mentioned on the stream last night, I am moving this weekend, and I will be setting up an improved home studio with better technical capability. It'll look the same, but it'll be much better technically for us. So I apologize if during the next day or two I'm a little unavailable to cover breaking news stuff. I will get back on the air as fast as I can, but we look forward to having this new capability for you. And for now, have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you to Joe for doing his usual great job as producing, CEO Joe Seals. And for now, that's it for Right Side Broadcasting. Thanks for joining us for President Trump's Iran announcement, and we will see you soon. Have a great weekend.